Welcome to Curate Your Career, a museum career podcast about staying, leaving, and everything in between. I'm Elin Filbey, museum educator turned career coach.
And I'm Alli, Schell, career coach specifically for museum professionals. And we're here to talk about all the messy, exciting, and sometimes confusing parts of working in museums.
Each week, we'll share stories, real advice, and quick wins to help you figure out your next move, whether that's staying, leaving, or just making your current job work better for you.
So let's dive in, because if there's one thing museum professionals are great at, it's overthinking. We're here to help you think smarter, not spiral. So take a breath and let's get started. All right, welcome to our first ever Mailbag episode. We're going to crack open the inbox and answer the questions you sent in. So we will be doing these every couple of episodes. We want to hear from you. We actually have a link that we'll be putting up in the show notes, as well as on our LinkedIn accounts and anywhere you can find out information about this podcast, so that throughout the time of our podcast, you can contribute to our mail episode.
Yes, we really want to hear from you. Please write us and let us know what we can answer. And yeah, I think before we get started, I just have to give a shout out to my former place of employment, the Smithsonian's Postal Museum in DC. I interned and contracted there. Did you ever go? I'm sure you went to it when you lived there.
It is such a hidden gem.
The
Of a museum.
hidden gem, right? And it's like also like now like having a kid, like baby A loves trains and planes and cars and all that stuff. And it's like, if you have a vehicle lover in your life, this is the hidden gem museum, because you can go in it. Like you can go in a semi truck, you can go in a stagecoach. Like, yeah, it's such
They
a
have
hidden
such
gem.
a cool collection.
Yes.
So I always get excited when I see job postings from there, because I know that it's a really cool place. So
It's
yeah,
so cool.
shout out.
Yeah. Woohoo. Hey, Postal Museum. If you're listening, love you. Yeah, it was really cool. I got to learn how to work a printing press when I worked there. We would like do stamp prints and stuff. It was cool.
So let's get into it.
All right. Let's dig into it.
Today, we're going to be tackling the things everyone is wondering about that no one wants to ask out loud, or maybe it's a burning question that you had and you don't know who's going to answer it. Job search weirdness, to museum world existential dread, to the is it normal that make us question all of our choices. So if you ever wondered what people are wrestling with, stay tuned. You're in good company. And we're going to get into it. So some people, just a note, they did not want to be known by their full name. So we're going to give them some fun anonymous names. So bear with our corniness, as they've given us full liberty to create the name for them.
No, you're good. Question number 1. Exactly. This question is from Becky, and Becky wants to know, I've had a lot of interviews in the museum sector, around 30. Oh my God, Becky, that's
So
many.
common though.
Yeah, right. In the last, some seem to have gone well. Some where I was a bit nervous. But even in the interviews where I appear to have had positive feedback, there have been some vague excuses as to why I haven't gotten the job. Where am I going wrong?
This is such a good question. I have been thinking about interviews a lot lately, just in terms of coaching clients and coming up with new ways to help people through this process. And so some things I'm just going to throw out, just a whole bunch of different things too, because again, without fully speaking to you, Becky, and knowing some of the nuances of things that you're alluding to, it's a little hard for me to like dig in a little deeper. But overall, right, this is something that's resonating with you if you have been in a bunch of interviews and feel like you're not making any headway. So first things first, I would do some form of mock interview, especially if you can with someone in the field. It can be a peer, right? It doesn't have to be someone in, various positions. It can be a peer in the field, and get feedback from them. You can even record yourself answering questions if that's not possible, because you might pick up things that way that you are not realizing, that maybe it's some way that you're answering questions. Maybe it's your tone. Maybe it's just, your nervousness comes out more than you think. So having an outside source at the very least that's listening in can definitely help, I think, provide some initial feedback into maybe why you feel like you're doing well, but you're not getting as far as you want to. Or you can book a session with me. I am more than happy to do some interview strategies and prep just to plug myself for a second. And then also thinking about how far you are making it through the interviews, right? So I always look at when I am working with a client, I think of things as like a sliding scale or like moving the needle, right? So like, okay, if you're not landing the initial interviews, right? Something might need to change with your application. So, okay, you are landing the interviews, which is great. So it's like something is clearly landing within your application material. And now it just is kind of what you're mentioning, right? Something needs to be tweaked within how you are answering things. And Elin and I talk about this all the time, which is answering the why. So I think considering like, are you truly speaking to what they are looking for, like within the job description? I know Elin is going to weigh in a second because we talk about this all the time, but really making sure you are hitting the points of like, what is this place looking for? And am I matching my skills to that? A lot of times we think we are, and it's not as clear as you think. You have to actually be more direct, and it's going to feel very silly. I tell a lot of people it's going to feel very obvious, but you cannot expect a place to connect the dots. And this goes into like even application material too, because people are, they're glancing through things. They're not taking the same amount of time that A, you're putting into it, or B, that like Elin and I are reading into your materials to really clearly see where things are connecting. So it might seem overly obvious, but connect the dots with them for sure. And making sure as well that you're speaking to the pain points, is what we can sometimes call it, or what problems are you going to solve for their organization. Clearly they're putting out a need. You have to sometimes put on the hiring manager hat and think through, okay, what is the type of person, or like the person that they want to fill this role within reason, right? What are they hoping that the person in that position is going to solve, right? And then finally, rather than what you lack, think about also what you bring to the table. I think is really important. So in addition to, all the other skill sets, what is something that you bring that no one else can? Or, in regards to the position too, like what is something else that you bring that is so unique? I think is a really interesting way to look at it. But those are some places to start to really hone in a little bit. So just to like recap a little bit, get some initial feedback from someone in the field. At the very least, record yourself responding to questions, getting really clear on what they're looking for within the job descriptions. Really looking at the job description, you can dump it into, AI if you're okay with using AI and getting the AI to pull out, hey, what are some key components of this role? You can ask it to turn it into questions for yourself, to make sure that you're hitting all of the nuances of the role. And then finally, putting yourself in the position of the hiring manager and really thinking about what you would want to find out from someone who is applying to this position. Anything I'm missing, Elin, or am I hit the key points?
Yeah, you hit the key points for sure. Something I tell my clients is like, how would you explain this job to your grandma? Like
I
my
love that.
yeah, like my grandma like didn't know what I did, right? Like so I had to like explain it very simply and clearly to her. And so like making sure that all of your materials, all of your interview stuff is in service to that explanation you would give your grandma about what the job does. Like you said, you have to connect the dots for people.
And last point, my
Mhm.
gosh, and going back to the why, the biggest thing of all is storytelling. This is something that I'm really
Mhm.
exploring. Again, you know this, Elin. We both know what our own clients need and what they struggle with is telling a good story, which seems easy. But what I find so many times is you will drop the interviewer in the middle of your story without the setup before and the results afterwards. So making sure you're telling a complete story. Sometimes the juicy stuff is in the buildup and in the results afterwards. So just again, you might feel like you're being a little wordy, but I think I always say that things come out in the details. So if you explain your processes or how you got there, or what problem you were solving for your own organization is going to let them see you in that role.
Yeah.
Okay. My gosh, I can go on about this all day. I have to like cut myself off from talking about interviews.
Yes.
So
It's
these are,
huge.
it's huge.
Well, and it's frustrating when you get that far to an interview and then things don't precipitate, like things don't happen, like that you're like, wait, what's going on here? Similar to telling the story, make sure you're actually telling a story and not talking in hypotheticals.
Mhm.
Give actual examples of something that relates to that, not like,
It's
well,
huge.
I would, or one time I did this, and not like set the story or, yeah. Don't speak in generalities.
Yes, absolutely. They want to see how you did in the role. Again, think if you were hiring someone, would you want them to speak in hypotheticals or would you want them to give you real examples so that you're like, oh, okay, I know exactly how they're going to handle this situation when they're in this role? My gosh, awesome point.
Really? Yeah.
Okay, question number 2 comes from, I hope I am pronouncing this right, Yelly. And apologies, I botched your name. But they want to know, how can I utilize my museum skills in other industries, which is the perfect question for Elin. I feel like I will have to cut you off too because you could speak about this all day.
Literally forever. Yes. Transferable skills is my jam. So, okay, how can I use my skills in other industries? The first thing you have to do is know what are your skills, right? You're going to be sick of me saying these questions. What do you like doing? What do you hate doing? What do you want to do more of? What do you like? What do you hate? What do you want to do more of? Get really clear on those. Because if you love doing research, you're not going to want to go get a job that's in public programs or engagement or program management or something, right? That you need to figure out what it is that you like doing and how and why you're good at it, and then go from there. So then once you know what kind of things that you're good at, you can then start to think about, what does your ideal job look like? Your wish list. What's your salary wish list? Do you want to be in person versus remote? Are there industries that you're drawn to? Do you want to stay in your geographical area? All of those kinds of things. Start to really think about how you want your job to look and feel. Do you want to work weekends? All of that stuff. So you've got your skills, you've got kind of parameters. Once you know those things, you can start digging into what fields use your skills. So you could just start with a simple Google. What are the top jobs for research, or what are the top jobs for database management, or things like that? You can also ask ChatGPT if you are down with using AI. ChatGPT is a great thinking partner in those types of things, with what kind of jobs could I be thinking about. And then I also have a free guide on my website that lays out, here are the kind of things you might have done in museums. And I break it down by skill set, not by job title. So, like, I really loved working with donors. Okay, here's some other kinds of jobs that you could do if you enjoyed working with donors and you have that existing skill set. And so it'll tell you job titles, all that good stuff. Other thoughts are, what are some other areas of interest for you? What are careers in that area? So, for me, I looked and I said, okay, I really like this career coaching aspect of things. So I started to look at other coaching career roles within, I'm in Madison, I'm in a university town. So I was like, okay, how can I stay in the university system in a role that uses these kinds of skills? But also, like, don't discount your passions and your interests too. Like, if you really love makeup, or you really love trains, or whatever your area of interest is, or your hobbies, don't be afraid to dig into those too, because when you have a passion and when you have an interest in something, you already have a baseline knowledge, and then you can really easily connect the dots for the hiring team of love makeup. Like, I love Sephora. This is just an example. I wish I loved makeup. I wish I was better at it. But, like, then when you're talking to the hiring manager, you can tell a really compelling story of, oh, well, I've been playing with my makeup since I was a little girl, and I really want to use my museum experience with digital asset management to bring it to Sephora to help run your digital assets, right? So that when you can leverage your passions and your interests, it A, helps you tell that compelling story, and then B, if you are leaving the museum field, it also might help to lessen some of that passion loss. I don't want to say loss, but that change from a passion led industry. If you're filling in with something else that you feel passionate about or strong about, it can help with those feelings of leaving the field.
Was just going to comment on that. I was like, that is a great way to think about as you leave the field, like what actually makes you passionate. And yeah, sometimes it is the museum industry as a whole, but then there are components of the role. And I love that because I think I also went through that existential crisis as I was considering my options. So I think that is really important to consider.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So this next question comes from the artist of relevance, and I are both big Nina Simon fans.
Hmm.
And the artist asks, I'm contemplating leaving the museum world for a bit, but worry I might not be able to use my skills and get back in. What should I consider when looking for roles outside of museums? that would still be relevant should I choose to return? Another great Elin question. Just setting you up.
Yes. Yes, I know. Thank you. So the first thing I think is looking at your skill set. Where are they strong? What are your value adds to an organization? And thinking about where you can move to potentially grow those skills. And I think a lot of people have this lingering question of, well, what if I want to get back in? What if I can't get back in? Once you're out, you might realize you don't want to go back, and that is okay. But maybe you do, right? Time to reverse engineer that. If you do want to re-enter, what level would you like to re-enter at? Is it ED? Do you want to be like a director level? Thinking about where you could see yourself coming back in the future, because if you're leaving as a education supervisor or education manager, you're probably not going to come back in as an ed manager, right? So think about where you'd come back. And then thinking, what kind of skills do I need to have that job that I do not currently have? So is it development? Is it management? Think about what kind of skills that dream job or that higher level museum job has that you don't. And if you are pursuing jobs outside the field, where can you gain those? How can you gain those? What do you do to go about that? You can also do things like serve on a board. You could volunteer. You can keep your network strong. All of those good things to keep your foot in the field.
That. And I feel like those two questions kind of go hand in hand. In some ways, they complement each other, just really giving people lots of different options. Yeah, I love these. These are such good questions.
I know, they're great. All right. Our next question is from Mismatch Made in Museums. Mismatch asks, I am a mid career museum professional working on a PhD in ancient history, but all of my museum experience comes from American history museums. I often feel a mismatch between my degree and my museum experience. Like I have too much background in my degree field for museums and too much background in museums for my degree field. I feel caught in between two worlds with no clear path in either. I left academia for museum 3 years ago to find a museum job and have only had temporary or seasonal jobs since. Ultimately, I would like to find a permanent job that values both of my backgrounds.
Really good question. And I work quite a bit with people that are especially pursuing higher education. So, quite a few people with PhDs. And I'm just going to zoom out for a second and then zoom back in, right? So, something that is unfortunately common in the field, and I just don't want to scare people, but sometimes museums, if they see someone like pursue PhDs, there was a time I think that that was really highly valued. Not that it isn't now, but they might look at that and see if you don't have any hands-on experience now in museums. Now it seems like you do, so that's a good thing. But they might see that you don't have too much hands-on work if you are like just going all the way through and getting just academic experience. So just a word of caution that that is something you might have to address. You might have to consider some other options to skill build and kind of beef out the hands-on experience, which I think is becoming more valued in this field, for better and worse, right? It is like at least a nice sort of a little bit of an equity thing where, you know, and while I stand education, higher education, all of this, just knowing how much a degree costs in this field, it can be tough to acquire that. So getting hands-on experience and working in museums and getting other relevant skills, I think is really important. So just putting that out there that sometimes that is something you can run into when applying for jobs and you have some higher education in the mix without the hands-on experience. Now, it seems like you do have some hands-on experience, which is great working in museums. And I know sometimes we get caught up in wanting to work at a place that speaks to like our sort of niche areas of study. I am guilty of that. And I have a whole story. Again, I'll tell it another day about, how I really tried to match the museums I wanted to work at with my unique interests. And at the end of the day, the place I was the most happiest at was one that I also did, American history and history aligned things. And it was at a museum that it was a subject matter that I really did not know much about. And I felt the most successful there for a variety of ways. So I just want to like plant in your brain the idea of maybe looking for again, all these are kind of tying together in some way, I think, but what are the key components of your degree? So like getting the PhD in ancient history. So like, is it that you really love to do research or, what aspects of that is really drawing you to your PhD program and ancient history in general, but just like, what are you liking about that PhD part, and then the American History Museum. So, like, what are the aspects of those parts? So, zooming out for a second and seeing what lies there. And I would rather you look for jobs that kind of match more of those skill sets versus like, oh my gosh, I have to find a museum that focuses on ancient history in the United States. Like, that is, I hate to say it, it's going to be really hard
Yeah.
in this day and age. So, first, I would see like, hey, where are the skills between both of these different sides of yourself? Where do they overlap? So I like to make that point too, because you're going to have to make that argument when you apply for jobs, when you're in an interview. How are these things relevant? So really thinking about where are these two for the mismatch? Where is now the match? Where do these two things fit together? How do these pieces come together?
Well, and like, because I think my question is like, where is I say I the mismatch says I want to find a job that values both of my backgrounds. And so, like you were saying, Ellie, like where is the intersection? Where do they overlap and why? And how do you tell that story? That's because that's what I'm curious about. Ancient history and American history, they're both history, right? But like where do they over yeah.
Where they overlap. And that like, and again, like putting yourself in the hiring manager's shoes, just like Elin did, of like, that would be a question, right? Like if I saw you applied for a job, why these two things, right? So
Yeah.
I'm always like get ahead of it, right? So get ahead of questions that they potentially might ask. So directly address whether in your cover letter, for example, I have this background in ancient history, yeah, plus, all this hands-on work in American history museums. The underlying factor is X. And something that can bridge gaps too. So let's say you're going for higher education or you're kind of in this weird in-between spot. Now these are roles that are a little hard to find, but if you're, you know, looking right and it, all the stars align, fellowships in museums can certainly help bridge some of these gaps if you're kind of between the hands-on work and sort of the research side of things because even though they're usually only about a year, they tend to pay decently for the fields. They're really set up to provide you with networking opportunities, give you that hands-on work, and then prepare you, like give you that leg up that you might need. So something to consider if you're kind of struggling a little bit and you're either open to moving or are in an area where like fellowship opportunities might pop up like in larger cities and things like that. So again, I think it's just sitting and like pulling yourself out of the moment and we're like, what are the larger skills associated with both? Where do they overlap? And having that clear argument as to why these two pieces fit together and what you would bring to that place from those two sides.
Yeah, totally. Because it could be a very cool
Mhm.
story and something that makes you really unique and makes you stand out. But yeah, being compelling in how you tell that story is key.
Yeah. Because places, again, don't expect places to connect the dots. You got to connect it for them. All right. On to our next question. And this is from Education is Fundamental. I am working in an institution that does not value my area, in parentheses, education. The focus and energy. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all,
Yeah,
education
same.
is so undervalued in museums. I
Yeah.
have to Elin and I both know. We just
Ugh.
have to address that. All right. So the person then asks, the focus and energy is on, again, so relatable, creating big splashy programs that make us look cool, parentheses, which is great too. But I think we need to value our audiences. So I'm finding it increasingly difficult to feel motivated and excited about my work when it is not valued by leadership. How do I name motivation? I think you should listen to Should I Stay or Should I Go, which is one of our episodes in our podcast for general insights. But you sounds like you might be at a crossroads. And there comes a certain point in a job where you might realize that there's a values clash, right? And if you're up against leadership and you don't have the power or don't have someone that can advocate for you within an organization, it might be time to consider finding that elsewhere. So listen to that episode. It's going to really walk you through some of these questions and getting some greater insights to see if there are changes that you can make at that organization. And I'll walk you through some things that you might be able to do there to get the motivation back, but then also have a real conversation with yourself of like, maybe it is time for me to leave and find that elsewhere. And knowing that, okay, the next place I want to go, that's something that's really important to me. And you can certainly tease that out in questions and things, or even looking through, the job descriptions and things about the organization to make sure that, hey, it's really important to me that a place values the education side of things. So to kind of deal with your situation at the moment. So some things to consider. Now, of course, I always have to like asterisk all this because there are always hierarchies within an organization. And so without understanding the full level of what is going on at your museum, I can only kind of speak in more general terms about things, but certainly self advocacy, right? So I'm sure you've had a conversation with someone that you trust at the organization, but if you haven't, again, there's lots of different people that potentially you could confide in or ask for advice on how to fix this issue or address it. It could be a board member, it could be again your supervisor or someone that can make some things happen, but really just like tell them the situation and that this is something really important to you and that you want to have a balance between these splashy programs and explaining why, yeah, they're great on the surface, but why education is really important and having those programs too, and the core mission part of things. And that's a good place to start. Another area is, all right, are there things that you can kind of carve out your own path with? So maybe there are opportunities just immediately outside your work. So maybe you can get involved with another like museum related organization. Maybe you create your own sort of network of museum educators. I did that something similar within when I was working at a small museum and I was like, I need support. I just need general support and to bounce ideas off of and actually even find ways that we could work together on programming outside of our organizations jointly. So maybe you can connect with other educators at our local museums, museum adjacent organizations and create the programs that you want to. There board is going to love, theoretically, a partnership. Grants love partnerships. So maybe there's something that you can carve your own pathway out and that can still be accepted at your organization. So just kind of two general thoughts on ways that you can kind of work through this situation, but also considering the bigger picture of what might have to happen if you hit a lot of roadblocks.
Yeah, and I think just acknowledging too, it's really hard when you don't feel valued by leadership. That just sucks. That does not feel good. And it is hard to stay motivated when you're feeling that way. And so acknowledging that feeling and sitting with it. And then like Ali said, like, can you take action to advocate for yourself, to carve your own path? And getting back to, I think, to your why. Why is education important to you? What in that you're doing is lights a spark in you. So yeah, it's a tough
I
one.
know Elin and I have both been there with education department land and convincing boards and higher authorities that be the importance of education in museums.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. Cool.
I
All
know.
right. I know. Well, and it's like it always reminds me of my one of my favorite quotes, which is something along the lines of education is the stoking of a fire, not the filling of a bucket. And so
My God, I love that.
isn't that a good one? Right. So it's, what stokes your fire, what gets you going. And if you can't find it where you're at, where are you gonna find it?
And getting, oh my gosh, that just, I've been thinking because there's been recent cuts to museum education programs. It's like
Lucas Museum. Huh.
speed art museum.
Huh.
Sorry, we had a little something in our throat here. I just have to call those places out. It's really important because there's always this natural instinct to want to cut education departments and education roles or pare them down. And it seems like they're usually the one of the first kind of roles in general to be cut. And I just see education beyond the general value it provides is like your direct link out into the community. And at a time when museums need to be connected to their community, this is really important. So maybe there is some facts and things that you can bring. I know there's lots of studies out there with some museum organizations that maybe you have to bring some facts and things to the table to show the value of education, which you shouldn't have to, but I understand.
It's like if education is not your priority, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's
Because it's tied in with everything, like collections care and development and like
yeah, it's what gets people excited and brings people up.
right. People don't if people don't know about your collection, they can't care about it.
Think of educators.
Right? We are a magical bunch. Ooh,
Oh, I guess
okay.
we're on our final question.
Yes, last question is from Mr. Worldwide.
We had too much fun coming up with these names.
I know, right? I love Pitbull. Are you a Pitbull fan?
I am a Pitbull fan.
Yeah. I mean, who's not though, really? His songs
Also
are
dating
so
us,
catchy. Also what?
dating us a little bit.
Yeah, I know. We're millennials, guys. Just be kind to us, all my Gen Z friends. All right. Well, Mr. Worldwide wants to know, how do museums see international students? Are there opportunities for 1 to 2 years of work?
This is a really good question. And I really wanted to address it because I do get quite a few international inquiries from people looking to break into the museum field here, find roles. So, even though this is from the student perspective, I just want to speak overall about finding work in the United States as an international person. So, first and foremost, and I don't mean for this to be discouraging. I just like to be real. Elin and I both like to be straight with people about things. I don't want to sugarcoat just because it doesn't help anybody in this situation and in this field. But I don't really think now is the time to be trying to approach the work in the United States as someone from abroad because of certain political climates in general. Also, the state of jobs as well in the United States as a whole is not the greatest. And narrowing in on museums. So, one thing I think I have landed on is a lot of museums don't know how the visa process works. They don't understand potentially how less difficult it might seem, but they just don't want to even try to figure that out. So there might be, again, I feel like there needs to be like a larger education within the museum sector on, how does it work to have someone internationally apply for a job? And how do you support them with working here and getting a working visa, maybe eventually living here? So that's something I'm just putting out there as a whole and potentially a future session. So I do need to do a little more digging on this, but I can just tell based on job descriptions and just also what I know of the fields that they get caught up with this whole process and they don't really have the time or want to take the time to dig in further to figure this out when they can just have their pick of people right here within the United States, unfortunately. And, within that too, I think that there is, there's certainly you can, getting into a university is one way to get here. And sometimes finding the job afterwards. I have worked with some clients that are like, okay, I'm here now. What? You really have to look at the job descriptions and see what they say because they're to know if a place is open to taking people internationally, they will mention visas or say, hey, we don't accept people with visas. Like that is just not part of our application process. Unfortunately, I don't come across them too often, but certainly it's something you're gonna have to look for. I see this happening more with fellowships. I will see that they will support international students and workers. So it's a little tenuous right now. Certainly keep your eye open to opportunities and just see what's out there. If you can wait it out a bit is the best I can kind of say at this point because it's just not really a great situation. It's really, I find it's competitive everywhere in the world. So I understand trying to find another place seems like something that's really appealing, but it seems to just be difficult everywhere and it's very competitive here in the United States even among people that are permanent residents. Not to be discouraging, but just it's not the best situation at the moment. So wish I had better news.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tricky one. I do want to mention a resource that we'll link in the show
Oh,
notes too.
excellent.
When I worked at the Wisconsin School of Business, we worked with a woman named Quan Siegel, and her coaching company is ICA Way, the letter ICA Way.com. Again, we'll put it in the show notes, but her whole coaching is based around helping international students find jobs in the US or international clients. So, yeah, we worked with her. She was amazing. So maybe we'll have to have Quan on the show.
That would be great
That would be
because
really awesome.
I need more education on this too, because I want to help people both looking for jobs internationally, but also museums understand the nuances of all of this, that
Yes.
it might be easier than they think to move someone from abroad.
Right. Yeah. So we'll give that resource and yeah, maybe we'll talk to Quan about getting her on the show.
So exciting.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I think, Allie, that is it for today. Remember, friends, that if you want your question, make sure you fill out our survey. It is in the show notes. You can also find it wherever you find out about this podcast. And can't wait for the next mailbag. This was so fun.
This is fun. I can't wait for the
Yay.
next one.
Yay. Me neither. Okay. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Curate Your Career. We hope today's episode gave you some ideas, encouragement, or at least a little bit of sanity for your museum career journey.
If you love what you heard, the best way to support us is to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with a fellow museum professional. who might need it.
And don't forget, you can connect with us, send questions, or share your story at curateyourcareerpod@gmail.com or find us on Instagram at curateyourcareerpodcast. Don't forget to fill out our mailbag form and share your questions that might be featured on a future episode.
All right, now go take one small action toward the career you actually want. So don't just survive your museum job, curate it, one step at a time.